All right, welcome back, everyone. I'm Bruno Buquerque. This is my partner, Walter Curti. We're here as ELT in Brazil to keep on our series of talking about course books and giving our perhaps not very valuable or relevant opinion, but this is the channel, so bear with us. Today we'll be analyzing, we'll continue analyzing life from National Geographic Learning, and more specifically on lesson 2, which is a vocabulary / reading / grammar lesson. So roda a vinheta and we'll see you right back.
Right, we're back. Bruno, so we were talking about this very interesting book in the previous video. So let's get back to it. So this is one of the units. In the first page 58 of this, just to remind you, this is not a pirate version of this material. It's provided by National Geographic Learning. So when we look at this unit sample 5A, we start by looking at this first part, and then it's something very common. Like you have a session on vocabulary, and then you have reading. Why we have that? We have pre-teaching of vocabulary. Something that actually not a lot of people, not everybody agrees with. Not everybody likes to do that, to teach that, pre-teach vocabulary and then do the reading. Some people feel that this is not a realistic thing because it doesn't really happen in real life. You have a learner out there, they get a piece of newspaper, nobody's going to pre-teach them vocabulary for it. I actually think I understand that. It's not that I completely agree. I personally think that if you pre-teach them something that will help them deal with the task, then it's completely valid. Bruno, what are your thoughts on pre-teaching vocabulary?
I agree. I think virtue is in the middle, right? So I don't think you should pre-teach vocabulary every time before a text, and I don't think you should never do it, right? I see the point of, oh, it's not real life like, but last time I checked, who was in real life? So it's still part of it's pedagogy. So I think if it works, it works. And it does work.
Yes. And it does work. It does. Very valid point. And then you have the cycles of reading, right? The first one, let me see, exercise 3, I believe it'll be some sort of prediction exercise. Let's check. Okay,
Walter,
so
can you expand on that? Because the cycle of reading might not be common.
Sure. When we talk about reading or listening cycles, we mean the pre, while, post. So you have a pre-reading task, so that you activate their schemata, so that you involve them to the topic of the text. Very common tasks are such as this one. You're gonna give them images or the title of the text, and you're gonna ask students to talk about that. In a way, you're actually having them predict the topic which they will be reading or listening to, right? So afterwards, you move on to the while reading. The first one is usually a gist task, and then you have a specific or detailed listening or reading, in this case, reading. And then you have one in which they will be talking and expressing their opinions in regards to what they read or listened to, right? So that would be a reading cycle. So just as most books, you have the complete cycle here, right? Actually, you don't, because you don't have a post exercise, right, Bruno? You have listening, you have a pre in exercise 3. You have listening for, like, you read the article and check your idea. So this is the reading for the gist. And then you have working pairs, read the article again and answer these questions. And then you have a set of open-ended questions. If this is a B1 book, and I believe it is, it's valid. I like the exercises, but there is no post reading exercise. It goes
The
straight into
post-reading
grammar.
exercise
Yeah.
is at the end of the unit. Because then when we get to the speaking part there, it says working pairs discuss these sentences about recycling. So it is connected to the topic of the
Yes.
text. But the authors here decided to move the post-reading to a moment after grammar development. Maybe the idea here is to provide the building blocks of language in vocabulary, then provide the context, the topic, and then the glue in grammar, how students can use these together to be more precise, and then allow them to express their opinions now that they have the vocabulary, the topic, and the grammar to put these thoughts together.
So I think we could take notes on that here because interesting thoughts, Bruno. So when you look at the reading here, we have the cycle, right? However, where's the post reading? You move on right down in here, right?
Yeah.
Good. I like that. I like that. Not every book will do it. This one does it. And I think it's a common thing in life. I might be wrong, but I don't think the units will always be the same, especially in between levels, right?
Yeah.
And then we have the grammar part. And this is an interesting one because you see, it's already asking the students a question. Which of these, you see that it's not asking anything in relation to the text. So we are not, when we think about approaches to language focus, it's not using noticing. We're not going to read and notice that. It's simply using the vocabulary from the text. So the language is contextualized, but that's all. Right, so we are going to use the vocabulary, we're going to do this, and now we're going to systematize the language, right? So it's just asking them a question. This is something that Bruno, you said right before we started recording, so I think we should expand on it, which is
this is probably a review.
It's probably, it might be a review, or it's taking into account the fact that this is not the first time that these learners are seeing this, learning this.
Mostly because the grammar point here is quantifiers, not countables and uncountables, right? So what is being taught here is not the difference between countables and uncountables, but a way of quantifying uncountable nouns, right?
Yes, and then you see that the focus here, it's not really what's countable and uncountable, but the focus is on using this, right? We're talking about quantifiers. To do that, the learner is supposed to know or to have some previous knowledge, prior knowledge on countables and uncountables, and this is the reason for it, right? So it is, in a way, preparing learners for that. Another thing that is interesting, it says, we use quantifiers with countable and uncountable nouns to talk about the quantity. Is that an explanation? Not really. Why? Because they have different rules. And then when you look at the exercise 7, they will use what's in this grammar box to systematize the language in here. So, and I think
is this, would you consider this noticing? Because there are no grammar rules and students are supposed to look at the example sentences in the box and be able and do the activity based on this analysis.
I would not consider this. I would not consider this a noticing, because a noticing has to be, I think a noticing is more inductive. This is an inductive book, and this is an inductive approach, because this is exactly the very definition of, and for people who are taking CELTAs, this is a grammar Sorry. Discovery. Right? Clearly a grammar discovery, language discovery. It is the language presentation and it is a discovery. Learners they are coming from the example and working out the meaning of language. So very
Inform
inductive.
and use.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very inductive book, right? Let me write it down.
But maybe inductive activity, because we don't know the rest of the book.
Yes, a very inductive language presentation, if you will, right?
Yeah.
Inductive, it's an inductive lesson, an inductive approach to language, right?
Mm.
And it is a grammar discovery as well. And that's why I already like the book. It's okay. You can, some people really like deductive lessons and they like teaching deductive lessons. I have a problem with that. I understand. I think it works for some people. I understand that some students will prefer it, and if they do, you should do it. But in terms of, I think it's metacognition. The process of an inductive lesson, it works best because it makes the student think. They analyze the language, they work out the meaning. So when they're doing this, let's just do one together. It's like, oh, we use in questions and in negative statements with countable or uncountable nouns. So yes, the student will have to read the sentences and think until they reach that it's any. Right, so it's the thinking, the analysis of the language. I really appreciate that. It's something valid, as opposed to something more deductive, in which shows like, the teacher looks at the grammar box and say, you see any, we use any for questions, we use it for negative statements, we're going to use this, we use it with countable, we use it with uncountable, and mind you, sometimes you get groups that are just so used to that, they're not used to doing this kind of work, this kind of thinking, right? That they may get in trouble and you may have to help them. And there's also the case of teachers who are too used to following the book's order. I'm just going to follow the order that is in the book. For this lesson, it would probably work beautifully.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
But it's in my opinion, it's somewhat a behaviorist approach to teaching. Because what we're saying is we want students, so you have this discovery moment for students to analyze the language and make up the rules. And then exercise 8, if I'm not mistaken, is controlled practice on this grammar.
Exactly. Yeah. A very PPP approach here, right?
Yeah. And then students are allowed to use the language creatively in number 9. So first we analyze the rules, then we practice applying the rules so that to avoid mistakes and that we're accurate. And then once we're accurate, we develop fluency and language use with creativity, right?
Yes. So can I add something there?
Sure.
Can I add something in there? Just a little thing.
Yeah.
Okay. We know that the inductive lessons and grammar discovery are part of a cognitive approach. However, teaching a very PPP lesson might not be that much. So one thing that you could do to make this lesson more interesting to the student is, why not give them this exercise 8 as a diagnosis, like a diagnostic task. And then you give them exercise 7, they do it, we see how well they do exercise 8, we move on, we do exercise 6 and 7 together, right? They do 6, they do 7, they systematize the language. I go to the workbook, find another exercise with this, which they probably have, and test it again. So we do this lesson from a PPP to a TTT.
It is a
test each
possibility.
test. That would be a possibility. Can you please go on? I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And oh no, go back to the book.
Sure. I'll go
please.
back.
I feel it's a similar suggestion. I would do vocabulary and reading, and then after doing the reading cycle where we need the post moment there, I would go straight to number 9. And then don't not do the grammar bit. So do number 9.
So you would do the task, you would ignore the language.
Oh no, I would do the task using the task as it is. If necessary, change the words in bold so that the sentences are true for you. Do the exercise as it is. And then go back to the grammar point 6, 7, 8. Yeah, and then do number 9 again.
Very interesting. So, which is also a TTT, right? And you would
I think it's closer to Scrivener's arc. So it's authentic language use, restricted language use, and then I always forget to say clarification.
Clarification
right?
again.
Okay, so what did we do? And maybe leave. So maybe vocabulary, reading, number 9. After number 9, 8 for restricted use, and then 6 and 7 for clarification. That would be it. Yeah,
very cool.
That would be
another idea. Just a possibility. What if you did, let's see, working pairs discuss these sentences about recycling? No, it wouldn't work. Because there is so much language in here already. But if you devise the task in which students would need they would need this kind of language, but you wouldn't without giving them any sentence, any language, no target language, right? So basically, you ask them, let me see. You could give them a task, for example, devise a plan to help your neighborhood or your neighbors recycle more or reduce their carbon footprint, something related to recycling. You give them a task, especially if you're teaching teenagers, and then let them do it. From that, we could use the text and then move on to language, and then read, and then do this as a less controlled practice. So you do a controlled practice, and then you move on to the less controlled practice, and then you redo the task from the beginning.
Yeah, it would work.
Just another idea. You see that there are infinite possibilities in here. Like there's so much we can do. Right.
And I know what I find beautiful about good course books is that if you're a novice teacher and you don't quite understand the whys behind the exercises and the organ. I heard John Hughes about this in one of his videos. John Hughes is one of the authors for National Geographic Learning. He says that course books are designed for novice teachers, so that if you follow exercise 1, 2, 3 up to exercise 10, you have a solid lesson. And this happens in this lesson that we saw. But it also gives experienced and more proficient teachers possibilities of adapting and moving things around, right? And that's why I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. I'm. It's due. Like, good job selecting the text, selecting the content, selecting the language, putting it all together, designing that beautiful grammar discovery. So you can either use the idea, follow the book, or do something better with it because you want to do a TTT lesson. Yeah. but not to destroy the activity into something deductive. Why would you do that? Because you don't trust the student to do the work? Like, it's something, just food for
It
thought.
saves time.
It
Uh,
saves time,
Most
but
of the time that I've seen teachers transforming inductive activities into deductive activities is that they're pressed for time, and then
Mhm.
maybe it's not even their fault. It's the crazy
I
schedule.
understand because it's sometimes because of the syllabus that they have to
Yeah,
follow, but it
yeah,
is a double-edged sword because the chances are students wouldn't learn with the same,
yeah.
you know,
You're covering the material, not really teaching it. Maybe, yeah.
very well. Yeah.
Difficult.
Do we
But
have
yeah,
a wrap?
I think we do. I think we have
Yep.
a wrap. Tell
Yes.
us in the comments below how you would teach this lesson. Would you go
Mhm.
1 through 9, or would you shift things around?
Mix
Yeah.
it up. Yes. And as usual, please give us a like, leave us a comment, smash the like button. We really appreciate it. Dá essa moralzinha pra gente. All
See
right.
ya. Good
See ya.
night.
Thank you.